At the 2023 Tokyo Auto Salon, Renault revealed the Megane R.S. Alpine, which is the last Megane R.S. that will ever be made. This comes as no surprise because since 2021, the Renault Sport Technologies brand officially became Alpine cars.
Which means this vehicle next to me is now officially Renault history. But before we get too excited, this is not the Alpine. Instead, it's the 300 Trophy, which is as close as we're going to get to the Alpine. And only a few models of this variant are coming into the country. So as a result, Renault was very specific about what we can and can't do with their press unit. We were told that under no circumstances could we take their vehicle onto the racetrack. Which is a bit of a shame because we know that those who are interested in this car don't really want to know about boot space. So in order to please Renault and to please you, the viewer, we asked Renault very nicely if we could take their vehicle to Gerotech testing facility. And thankfully, they said yes. It's actually quite wise for Renault to say that we should not drive this car on the racetrack because it forces us to experience this car on a normal road. And I can tell you that there is a vast difference in terms of the ride quality versus this vehicle and the 280. The 280 was backbreaking. It was almost unlivable from a day-to-day perspective. But this vehicle, as hard as it is, it's much more palatable and you can enjoy it as a daily driver. The 280 variant also had the option of a manual gearbox, whereas this 300 only has an EDC. Dual clutch transmissions for me are always a bit of a hit or miss. At low speeds, they tend to be a bit jerky and clunky. This one isn't terrible, but it's not perfect. But where they do come alive is at higher speeds. When you think of a Renault Megane R.S, you don't naturally think about practicality. But interestingly, this vehicle is actually quite practical. It's got enough space for your backseat occupants, and you've also got a big boot. But when it comes to this 300 Trophy Edition, my favorite elements about this car has got to be these seats. They're well balanced in that they're not too hard, but you can still feel that they will hold you quite firmly when you're cornering at speed, especially on a racetrack. A few things that I must mention with regards to interior quality is, on the one hand, the top section of this dashboard is very nice. But when you start getting to this section here and this section here, those plastics are a little bit too hard for my liking. I guess if you're buying yourself a car such as this, you're not too worried about that, but you're more worried about this. And I must say, this steering wheel is very nice. This combination of Alcantara and leather, and of course, these extra long extended paddles do make you feel like you're in something special. The RS300 Trophy does have a top speed of 255 kilometers per hour. However, if we attempted to do that on public roads, it would end in jail time. Thankfully, Gerotech does have a high-speed oval. We do have a lower ride height and we do have stiffer springs, but I must say I'm quite impressed with just how planted this car feels on the road. And hot hatches tend to be quite hard, and when the damping of a vehicle such as this is quite hard, the vehicle tends to bounce. But at speed, this car feels quite sorted. Let's try for slightly higher speed, but nothing too reckless because I don't want to make enemies with Renault and I enjoy what I do for a living. Wow, I'm very impressed by just how sorted the chassis feels. Yes, you may be slightly compromised from a day-to-day perspective, But now with this car set up in sport, at 170 odd kilometers an hour, this car feels pretty solid. The 300 Trophy utilizes the same 1.8-litre 4-cylinder turbocharged engine, but it produces 221 kilowatts and 420 Newton meters, mated to a 6-speed double-clutch transmission, which basically means that this hatch will do 0 to 100 in 5.7 seconds. Now, I'm going to do what all immature boys do, and I'm going to try achieve that using, of course, launch control. So, I need to activate Sport in order to engage launch control. So I'm going to leave the vehicle in Sport. There's no need for race because we're not racing. Of course, first gear. And I love the startup sequence of this launch control because you pull these paddles back and it says launch control active. And that immediately makes me feel like I'm a character of Fast and the Furious. So let's go. Green lights. It changes early there, and it makes sense because obviously you need to have the most amount of torque as possible, and just like that we're already at 140 kilometers an hour. This thing is quick. It's very quick. Back in 2018, I had the marvelous privilege of driving a Megane R.S. 280 for 3 months. And I walked away feeling okay about the car. It felt a bit too hard, a bit too gimmicky, and it actually lacked that thing that we want out of a hot hatch. This 300, however, changes all of that, and it's a major improvement on all fronts. It rides better, it feels better, and it definitely sounds better. If this is how we're going to remember the Megane R.S. in the future, I think it's going to be a very good memory indeed. Only 55 units of this model are coming to South Africa with a lovely price tag of 950,000 Rand, which is irrelevant because for Renault fans, they'll definitely view this vehicle as a piece of automotive history and maybe an investment for the future.